Good evening, Springfield. I'd like to call the Township of Springfield's Planning Board meeting to order June 6, 2018. Adequate notice has been given in accordance with the Sunshine Laws. Notice was published on November 22nd, 2017 in the New Jersey Star Ledger, which is the official newspaper for the Township of Springfield, and posted in the Annex Building on December 29th, 2017. Let's do a salute to the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Perfect. Well, thank you, everyone. Mr. Mardini, can we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Mayor Huber, absent. Mr. Barnett?
Here.
Mr. Schwartz, absent. Mr. Fernandez?
Here.
Ms. Grozbowski?
Here.
Mr. Blumenstein, absent. Mr. Rosenberg, absent. Mr. Brundell?
Here.
Vice Chairwoman Kessel?
Here.
And Chairman Tiger?
Here.
We have quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Perfect. Thank you. Before we start the meeting, I did receive an email from Michael Gonzalez. He has decided to resign his seat as planning board member. We will forward that to the governing body for them to take action. And you know, we'll miss Michael Gonzalez. He's a good member of the board for a couple years now. So we appreciate his service. We have the meeting minutes of May 2018. Do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
I would like to make a motion to approve the May 2018 minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone have to abstain?
Jody.
Sure, May, yeah, right?
Yeah.
I do.
Perfect. Yes, for me too. Motion passes. We have no resolutions because we adopted the one at the last meeting. We have two applications tonight. We have application 9-2016S, which is Springfield Parcel LLC, Brixmore, 697 Morris Turnpike, Block 501, Lot 3. This is an amendment to the site plan with one exception. If the council wants to come forward, but if everyone realizes this was brought to us last September where the board approved a Chipotle and some other retail use that's TBD. And I think they have some changes to the site plan that they want to discuss.
Correct.
Go ahead,
Thank you,
Counsel.
Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Richard Goldstein, counsel for the applicant. We appreciate the board hearing our application this evening to amend the final site plan. We come to the board this evening after we found ourselves in a position of great dismay when we learned that the building that was constructed was not constructed at the location as depicted on the approved plan. It was a contractor error. The day that we found out that this error had been made, my client immediately came to the township, reported the error had been made. The building was shifted away from Morris Turnpike by 3.5 feet, and therefore we need to find the space on the lot in order to adjust the parking area that is on the opposite side of the building. In order to do that, I have a witness here, my engineer, who will show you the changes on the site plan. But effectively, everything on the plan remains in accordance with the ordinance, with one exception, and that exception is the width of the drive aisles. The drive aisles had been approved at 24 feet in width. By reducing that drive aisles to 22 feet, we were able to pick up the footage that was lost and allow the site to continue to operate in a safe manner. I do have with me this evening a traffic engineer that can provide testimony if the board has any questions. I don't know that it's necessary, but I'd like to just very briefly bring my civil engineer up to show the board the changes.
Let's go with the engineer to highlight the changes between what was approved and what you're requesting now.
Great.
And then we'll see if there's a need for the traffic engineer, but I think the engineer should suffice.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
And/or attorney, I wasn't on the board last year when this originally was. Is there any issue with me hearing this and voting on this, or would have needed to read the transcripts or something? Or are these two separate matters?
That's two different questions, and the answer is no and no.
No.
Okay, I can't
So
get
the
out
answer
of
is
that.
the answer is you can hear it.
You're not getting off.
Or the other answer is nice try. But you're here.
Continue, Counselor.
Would you
And
please
then-
raise your hand? Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth in the proceedings before the board tonight to help you God?
I do.
What is your name, sir?
Scott Quigley, Q-U-I-G-L-E-Y.
Scott, have you appeared and testified before this board on other occasions?
Not this board.
Hey, Scott, make the microphone tall like you are.
You can pick it up.
You could just scoot too.
Not before this board, but other boards.
All right, let's qualify you quickly, Scott. What's your educational background?
I have a bachelor's in engineering from Virginia Tech. I've been a practicing engineer for 14 years, licensed in New Jersey and other neighboring states.
And by whom are you employed?
Langan Engineering, Langan.
And you regularly appear before boards and your license is valid as of tonight?
Correct.
I think, any problems with accepting him as an expert? No? None for the board? All right, please proceed to give us a brief overview of
Sure.
what.
So as Rick mentioned, the building shifted 3.5 feet away from Morris Turnpike. So, excuse me, I'll just bring up the site plan.
Is this the same site plan that was on file?
Correct.
Thanks, Scott. So you think it'd be-
Well, we could. They have one foot setback, so they can. Mike.
Can I see it from the computer? I like the.
So as Rick said, the building shifted away from Morris Turnpike by 3.5 feet. And in order to make up the difference on the southern property line to maintain the 5-foot parking setback, we've decreased the drive aisle width from 24 feet to 22 feet for all the drive aisles within the site. In addition to that, we have increased the parking width from 9 feet to 9.5 feet for the parking spaces along the building storefront and within the middle 10 spaces here. And that's just to allow for a little more maneuverability with the narrower drive. We still have 32 spaces as originally approved, and there's also a few other minor changes incorporated to this plan that were approved by Mike Disco and Sam Ardini through the construction process. It was just additional sidewalk around the building for some new door locations following tenant coordination.
Can you explain to the board whether, from a flow standpoint, I don't think we need the traffic engineer, but I'll defer to the board, how cars will flow through high level and how this will affect the overall site per se?
Generally speaking, following the last board meeting, we were told to make the drive aisles one way, just to have a one-way counterclockwise circulation through the site like this. So the 24-foot drives were already pretty wide for a one-way drive aisle. You usually see 18 feet or so. So we don't anticipate any detrimental effects to the circulation.
What about for the garbage trucks?
We've run the truck circulation patterns, and there's no
Right.
effects to that either.
Before we open to the board, Mike, do you agree?
For one-way
That-
circulation, 22 feet is ample. That's not
more than enough problem.
Same for fire engines? We don't anticipate fire engines entering the site. They actually requested that the fire hydrant be placed along Cleveland Place here.
For that reason. Before board goes to questions, just want to, Mr. Michaels, any?
I have no comments.
From a planning standpoint, this doesn't affect?
No, it doesn't. It meets the ordinance standards. There's no variances needed for these changes.
Okay. And then before I open to the board, so you have a lot more frontage now, space on Morris, and part of our mandate of trying to bring more green space. Obviously, when we went this application, I was on the board, and we couldn't find any places to put trees and landscaping and stuff. Now you have that. Can you describe what you're proposing? I read some of the engineer's letters.
Yeah, just one second.
This wasn't submitted, correct?
This was the landscape plan submitted, correct?
Submitted, okay.
Basically, we shifted any landscaping we had on site around to the front of the building, because as you said, there's about 3 or 4 more feet there. Just more shrubs along the frontage there in front of the building.
Mr. Disco, have you reviewed this? Do you think this is appropriate? Anything more that we can kind of make into a rain garden? Anything from a drainage standpoint, just kind of what our environmental commission and guidance has been given to the board?
The revised plan from the original has 3 additional trees and some additional ground cover elements. So, it certainly can be accentuated, it always can be. You just wouldn't want to impact the site triangle. With the additional 3 foot, as long as I guess that's the transformer, is that the?
Yeah, that's the as-built transformer location there. We also have underground utilities running through there, the water line, the gas line, et cetera.
So as long as those would accommodate whatever the board seeks and physically.
Is there room for additional plantings that you can work with the engineer to see what you can come up with? Or do you think this is acceptable?
There's, on the revised plan that was submitted, there are areas within the site triangle where there are no plantings now, so as long as those remain low. You could add there, and then you.
Small bushes or something like that?
Switch out behind the or outside of the triangle into something maybe balanced that.
Is that something you can work with our engineer to come up with some additional bushes to
Yeah.
make, or if it rains, it's kind of helps with some of the drainage?
Well-
Even though I know that it wasn't an issue, but that's one of the things in Springfield that we're really working.
Yeah, we can work with Mike to get to a satisfactory plan.
Perfect. Let's open up to the board. Mr. Brendel? No question. Mr. Fernandez?
I'm okay.
Ms. Kessel? You say enough. Mr. Barnett?
No, sorry you have to go through all this for your contractor, but maybe it's a happy accident, because we'll get some more trees.
No? Okay. You've read the letters from both our professional engineers. Any objection to agreeing off the bat that you'll comply with anything that's in there?
I don't believe we got one from Mr. Michaels, just from Mr. Disco.
I didn't write a letter.
Okay, so you,
But we-
Mr. Disco, you agree with that
Yes.
letter, and you'll comply with any corrections and changes?
Correct.
Okay. Seeing no more questions from the board, do you have anything further?
No, I don't.
The only other question I have, which maybe you can answer, is there been any decision on what retail is there? Has that been leased out?
I can ask my client to come forward.
Yeah, just for that question, he can swear him in again, just for the board's edification. Do you want to swear him in?
Hi, Mark Newman with Brixmore Property Group. Mark Newman with Brixmore Property Group. Oh,
Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth in proceedings before this board tonight, so help you God?
I do.
Mark, how do you spell your last name?
Newman.
Thank you.
To answer your question, we do not have a signed lease yet. We are getting closer with I don't want to call them a retailer because it's not really a retailer. It would be almost like a physical therapy, a high-end physical therapy use. We think it's going to be very low parking requirements. I think that they can only have 5, I guess you'd call them customers or patients, not really patients, but customers at a time.
Okay. Okay, and then last question I have is when, let's assuming the board grants and you start up again, when are you anticipating opening?
Well, as soon as we can, really. We're in the process right now of turning the space over to Chipotle, and I believe that they've got between, I think it's 4 or 5 months of construction time in their lease. So we're hoping that they're open before the end of the year.
Okay.
Because the other space isn't leased out yet, we think that'll be a little bit longer, probably in the spring of 2019.
Perfect. Anything from the board on from this? No?
Not until they come in front of us.
Yes.
Maybe if
On
they,
this issue, I'm good.
Yeah.
okay.
I don't think, well, depending on the use, they probably don't have to come before us, I think.
Only if they needed a variance, and
Only
we
if
don't
they
think
needed
that they
to.
will.
That was
so.
what it was, right?
I believe in the original resolution,
Did we
there was a
keep-
condition that they had to submit to SAM.
SAM, yes.
For review on that issue as to the second unknown tenant.
Yes, and then if Sam feels that it needs to come before us for use or something, then it,
Yeah, they need to file a change of tenancy application, even though there's no tenant, but that's the application. And then if it fits within this approval, then we can give them approval, otherwise they have to come back here.
that's fair, just like anything else. Okay, anything further? The board has nothing, Mr.
I just would want to remind the board that there was the left turn prohibition that was part of the original approval out of the driveway. Subsequent to that, as you know, Wawa got approval. They're planning on installing that traffic light.
Yep.
Which would then remove that potential prohibition.
Until the, yes, if the
Once the
DEP,
light is there, then.
Yeah.
Once the light
Once
is
the yeah, that
Yes.
was the deal.
so when the light's there, that's
don't-
something
you can-
administratively that we'll work with our engineers. Until that happens, you'll probably be open before that happens. So that was one of the questions I asked. Any members of the public, do you have anything further before I open? No, I don't. Thank you. Any members of the public that wish to come forward on application 9-2016S, Brixmore? Don't rush up all at once. Seeing none, I'm going to close this matter to the public and open up to the board to entertain a motion to take action. Just if Mr. Keynes can just review the conditions.
Let's review the approval. I think, council, what you're asking for is amended preliminary and final site plan approval with an exception from the design standards for cartway width.
That's correct.
Or park lane width in the parking lot. And that's the only relief that you need, is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Keynes.
Okay, so all terms and conditions of the previous approval would remain in full force and effect. The only other condition I heard is that they will provide an enhanced landscaping plan that'll be subject to final review and approval of Mr. Disco. And I think that was the only thing. My opinion is I don't think that for something like this, that there's any need for them to go to the county. I think you could submit it if you want, council, for informational purposes. Technically, the county has site plan review. I don't see that this triggers it, but that's your call, unless Sam sees something I'm missing.
So with what Mr. Keen's outlined, do I entertain a motion to take action on this application?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for the approval of application 9-2016S for Springfield Parcel LLC, Brixmore, amendment to site plan and final with the conditions articulated by our council.
I second.
Mr. Brendel, okay. Can I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Barnett,
Yes.
Ms. Kurzbowski,
Yes.
Mr. Fernandez,
Yes.
Mr. Brendel,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kessel,
Yes.
Chairman Tiger.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Council, do you wish to request the right to waive receipt of the resolution? Because my guess is you're moving ahead on the site and you're looking for all kinds of things, and we're not going to meet for another month.
I would love to make that request,
And-
Mr. Solicitor.
And Mr. Solicitor, I'm not down south. And what that would mean is that you can proceed at your own risk. You didn't have anybody appealing this decision. And as far as I'm concerned, the construction department and the engineering department is in a position of doing anything that is absolutely necessary in order for you and your client to be able to move forward.
Does the board agree, board agree with that?
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
You
so
okay with that, Sam?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Go crazy.
Thank you very
Thank
much, and we really appreciate being listed so quickly, and we love the tight ship that you run. Thanks.
Yes, perfect, thank you. Next application, the next application is application 5-2018S. This is Care Station Medical Group, 90 Route 22 West, Block 3102, Lot 11. This is for a minor site plan for a new facade. Counselor, can you introduce yourself and
Good
go
evening,
over your
Mr.
brief
Chairman, members of the board. My name is John Schmidt. I'm an attorney with Lindaberry, McCormick, Estabrook, and Cooper in Westfield, represent Care Station Medical Group. As the chairman had indicated, we are here tonight for minor site plan approval. We are asking the board permission to renovate and refurbish the front facade of the building. As Dr. Pizzoso, who is with me tonight, who is the managing member of the Care Station Medical Group, will testify in a moment that every other aspect of the building will remain the same. We also have with us the project manager, who will testify as to the nature of the renovations for the building, the front, just so everybody understands.
Let's go with brief.
That's why they got you all dressed up, Counselor. Counselor, just for the record, did you receive a copy of Bob Michaels' report dated June?
I have not.
You guys have a copy of it? I mean, I can pull it up on my iPad so you can review it.
No. Okay. Sam, do we have an extra copy of Bob's report? And Michael, did you do a report on this too, bud?
Yes, you did. Yes.
Do you have a copy of Michael's report, Counselor?
Either one.
Oh, boy, oh, boy. I was gonna ask you the simple question, if you agreed to everything in that. I'll still ask it, but I guess you wanna read it.
Do you want to take 2 minutes and review it real quick?
You want to do something else while
Yeah.
we're waiting?
Why don't you
Guys?
guys take it, Mr. Schmidt, you want to take a seat for 5 minutes? I'm going to do a few other things to give you an opportunity to read
Sure,
it.
absolutely.
Be super quick. So we're going to postpone this application for about 5 minutes. Let's discuss a few things. Number one, our next meeting we're working on doing for July 9th. We need to make a change. I'd like to poll the board July 9th at 7 o'clock in this very same room. Any concerns? I'm going to start with this side of the board. I mean,
Monday?
that's a Monday. Monday, July 9th. It's kind of an awkward week, the week before, the week after. I know that Mr. Keen's is able to come. Mr. Disco, you said you can come. Mr. Michaels?
I have another meeting currently scheduled for that evening. I don't know if there's going to be something on the agenda or not, but it's another meeting night for me.
If not, can you send?
Yes.
Okay, or if we have to and you can't make it at the time, can you call in potentially if that's the case? If you're not,
I couldn't call in because I'd be at another meeting.
okay, but so if you're not at the meeting.
I can make this, I can send in a sub, or I'll send in a sub to the other meeting.
Yeah, okay, that would actually, depending on what we have.
Yes.
Maybe that's something we could do.
Can we do it, I have a meeting that ends at 7 in Morristown, so if we did
We just, I'm
7:30,
okay with doing 7:30.
Right,
That
yeah,
actually
for
works out
7:30.
much better for,
If I leave that right at 7, I can get here by then.
Sil,
Yep, good.
7:30? Sharon?
Yep.
Jerry?
Yeah, I'm all right.
Ryan?
Most likely, yes.
Yeah, I think works.
Most likely, yes.
That's better. Okay, so we are going, please let,
I'm gonna go with the most likely, yes.
yes, we'll go with the most likely yes, and then anyone that's not
The
here.
box at home first.
Yeah, the boss. So, Mr. Mardini, if you can let, if you can let Mrs. Law know that we are going to move our July 11th, 2018 meeting to July 9th, 2018 meeting at 7:30 in this very room.
Yeah.
So anyone, applications that we have that are coming, please let them know that
Let
change
them
it.
know tomorrow.
Yes, so that way they know. So that's set. Okay, next thing is we are going to be doing a redevelopment, a re-review of our master plan. If Sam, if you want to give a very brief overview, and then I know we're going to pick two people. I know that Andrew Schwartz is already interested in doing it. I wanted to see.
Okay, I gotta fix my microphone. We are really due to go over our current land use ordinance. It hasn't been updated since 2003. There are a lot of problems with the ordinance, a lot of sections that were updated and revised, but they still shown in the old ordinance. There are a lot of new ordinances that were adopted that are not included. And there are a lot of items or issues that needs to be addressed with the ordinance. And so I asked the Township Committee to give us funding to have a committee to go over the current ordinance and revamp it and have a new version for 2018, which the committee agreed. And I'm putting together a subcommittee that will meet 8 weeks, hopefully starting not next week, but the week after. And every week we will go over a section of the ordinance, make revisions. Mr. Michaels will make those revisions. He will do his research. Mr. Disco will help us with his expertise and opinions. And then part of that subcommittee, I'm hoping to have members of the planning board, one at least, maybe two. The same with the Board of Adjustment. Then we'll have myself, the zoning officer, the board planner, and the board engineer. And that's where we are. We would like to have a one or two member volunteer. Unfortunately, the meetings have to be during the day, so I don't know who can make those meetings during the day.
Can they be via the phone for some of the people?
They can call in if they want to, join
I
us
can
through the
create
phone.
a
Yep.
phone number for us to call in if that's the case. So for the boards, just, you know, I think we've been behind the 8 ball, Springfield, with some ordinances that we've been trying to catch up and amendments. Instead of doing one-offs, we've kind of went to the discussion that it's time to kind of update it all at once. So from that standpoint,
You may want to ask Dave Pillman's team.
Yep.
He works primarily in the
evenings. So what we're going to do is, what I'm going to do is, you know, if you guys want to email me, give it some thought, and then we don't have to pick it. It's not like we have to pick it on the record, folks. Over the next couple days, let's think about what your commitment is, what you can do, you know, and see what we can come up with, and then we'll send me a note, and we'll get back to Sam. But I want to give you 2 members.
Yeah, I know Sylviane said she's available during the day, so we would love to have her. And,
Perfect.
And David, and maybe if any other members, we just can't have more than 3, I believe, right, Mr. Bean?
No, I think you get a,
Can't have more than
the 2 boards don't matter together, right? Meaning if we have 3 from planning and 3, does that matter?
we can't have quorums of the boards. So this is a 9-member board with 2 alternates, right? So we can go up to 4 here.
Right.
The zoning board can go up to 3.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna have only 1 person because they're all working also, so.
Yeah, okay. So we'll chat through email, and we'll figure out what's the right thing, and the board will email me, or Jen, of
Okay,
any volunteers.
and in the meantime, if you have concerns, any concerns about the current ordinance, and you wanna send them to me, we can discuss it at our meetings, and before the ordinance, the final version is sent to the planning board for discussion and adoption, we will have an ordinance committee meeting here, just to go over it one more time before you guys see it and decide on it.
Perfect, okay, well, thank you. Mr. Schmidt, our next thing is about 20 minutes of discussion, so
ready.
you ready? Yeah. Let's go. It's good housekeeping.
We have reviewed the two letters for the town, and just two minor corrections, if I may. The paragraph 2 in the letter from Mr. Michaels talks about a new emergency exit door. There is not a new emergency exit door. The exit door is going to remain the same. The emergency exit door is going to remain the same. We're not adding any new exterior doors. The interior now has 2 entrances. People can go in and go out the 2 entrances, and Dr. can testify. We're now going to have one entrance and exit. The other door will simply be an emergency exit. The only other issue that I think that we need to address is the fact that the freestanding sign was approved by the town. It may be located on the New Jersey right-of-way, but we've never had any issue with it. It's the same sign that was there. It was just retrofitted. Everything else is the same. The manager can testify if you'd like. There's a question concerning the light fixtures on the new decorative columns that are being placed. Are going to be inset so that they're not going to protrude onto any walkways.
That's it. Otherwise, you agree with the 2 reports, Council?
I believe so, yes. Otherwise, it seems to be.
Why don't we hear from the architect first?
He is the project manager.
Project manager?
Yes.
Of what the facades, because that's what I think is the big question, and then we'll see if there's a need. Is that fair?
His name is Alan Zimbarek.
Alan, do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth in proceedings before the board tonight, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
You want to spell your last name now, please?
Z, as in zebra, A-M-B-A-R-A-N-O.
Did you ever testify before this board before?
No, I have not.
What's your educational background?
I went to Roger Williams School of Architecture, graduated with a BS in Historic Preservation.
And are you licensed as a certified? You're not licensed as an architect?
He's the.
Do you have any? I got it. Do you have any?
I've been doing this for 20 years.
Okay, and
Yes.
you regularly appear before boards, and you're the project manager.
I'm the project manager, yes.
Tell us about the project, will you?
Sure. So we want to take the existing facade, make it more modern. We're going to use stucco or an ephes kind of mix because we have some brick. To build out the faux pilasters or columns, we'll probably use ephes there because we're going to put about 4 inches of foam to build it out to give definition. And then it'll all be coated and painted to look nice. I mean, there's really not much that we're doing there. The entrance, right now the existing entrance is full height glass up to the deck. We're going to lower that and put ephes above so we can put the sign in the awning and put all new storefront, new doors
And what is
to dress it up.
And there's going to be a change in the entranceways and the exitways, and have 1 instead of 2?
Yes. Well, the door on the right remains the same size.
And will that be just an emergency exit door?
Yes.
So entrance and exit will be through the door?
Underneath the awning.
Underneath the awning and the sign that says Care Station Medical Group?
Correct.
And that's going to be back?
That's the major change on this application?
I'm sorry?
Is that the major change on this application?
I don't think there is any change. We were just advised when the plans were submitted that we had to appear to get approval. My understanding is the sign has already been approved.
So, okay, let's just go over I think that's perfect. That's good. Let's talk about the sign that's in the right of way. Mr. Disco.
Again, I'm sure it was approved, probably when it was constructed, it was a little off. There's no harm, no foul in that. If DOT isn't complaining about it, I just would assume you just leave it be at this point.
Perfect.
I'm just pointing it out.
Yeah, no, you always do that for us, to give us all the facts.
Yeah, I was just a little confused, because on the floor plan, the center door was labeled new emergency exit, but I take it that that labeling is probably incorrect. That's your main entrance, is what's labeled new emergency exit door on the floor plan. Where on the elevation, the door on the right is what's identified as the exit door.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's just the labeling error, so now my confusion is ended.
ended, okay, so we'll just, as any condition of approval, as any condition of approval, we'll make sure that that gets updated on the plans. Okay, do you have anything further?
I would ask for the same waiver that was.
We'll take care of that after.
Yeah, we're not there yet.
Don't assume you're getting an approval.
You're a little ahead of us. Okay, so, seeing any other questions, Mr. Brendel?
No question?
Mr. Fernandez?
No.
Ms. Kessel? Mr. Barnett?
What about landscaping?
We have no intention at the present time of changing any of the existing landscaping. The bushes down the side of the building.
Are the bushes in good shape? Any? Are they, you did a site visit?
They, on their plan sheet 404, they have an existing left side photo which shows it. I think I had an angled photo which was more or less really to encompass that sign.
I mean, they look like,
Photograph too, yeah.
they look in good shape, they're not dying where we need to take action and do everything. You comfortable with that?
That's all on the
Just
side.
I'm asking a question.
Still?
Good.
Good. Okay, I have no questions. Any members of the public here to speak on application 5-2018S? Care Station, rather. Seeing none, I'm going to close that matter to the public and open up the board for some discussion. Mr. Keynes, can you reread any of the conditions or verbiage that the board needs to be aware of before taking action?
I don't think there are any conditions, quite frankly. The condition of changing the plans, that's gonna be something they're gonna have to do, not for us, but for the construction department.
Correct.
When they're doing that. So I don't know that there are any, unless I'm missing something, Sam.
There's none.
Okay, they don't need any county, DOT, or any of that stuff, just
No.
blanket, all, whatever they have. Okay, good. Seeing none, can I entertain a motion for application 5-2018S? Go ahead, Sil.
I was leaving it for Brian this time. Okay. I like,
Okay.
I was like, I'm gonna be quiet this time.
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to approve application S-2018-S, Care Station Medical Group, for, the minor change in site plan for the new facade.
Second.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Sure. Ms. Grzybowski,
Yes.
Mr. Brendel,
Yes.
Mr. Barnett,
Yes.
Mr. Fernandez,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kessel,
Yes.
and Chairman
Yes.
Tiger.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Perfect. And
Counsel, you have anything else you wanna ask for?
I'd like a waiver from the town so that we could begin construction before the resolution.
At your own
is
risk.
Prepared and finalized.
At your own risk. Any members of the board have any concern about that?
No.
No? Seeing none, the resolution will be at our next meeting on July 9th, but you can go ahead with.
Just
working with
to
Sam.
say something, we have a form that the building department gonna ask you to sign, basically saying you consented to the waiver of the receipt of the resolution.
Perfect. Thank you, Counselor. Have a good night.
Thank you, members.
Take care. No, we're not motion to adjourn, not so fast. We're doing pretty good. The last matter we have is last meeting we had, we discussed some of the, doing some of the planning on the SAC site for discussions of the governing body we sent to the governing body a letter. We asked them to allow us to do a small study, which Mr. Michaels has completed. We asked them for permission to reach out to Milburn and have some discussions of what's been thought of there, and to reach out to the property owner. In between now and then, we decided to wait to speak to the property owner and Milburn until we received a planning report, which we received on Tuesday from Mr. Michaels. I believe the board has a copy of it. And Mr. Michaels, can you present it to us, give us what you've done briefly, and then let's open up the board for discussion and Mr. Keynes can tell why we're doing this a little bit more, because some of the board members weren't here last time.
Yes, the first part of my letter, I just discussed the existing conditions that are on the property. As many of you are aware of it, I don't have to go over that. The property is approximately 9 acres. And the other information about the current existing conditions are in there. And then the next portion is development considerations and scenarios. And I laid out what I think should be some of the overall considerations, no matter what course of action is proposed by the board. And that, first of all, any development should respect the neighboring land uses, providing a transition between the single-family homes that are to the east of the property and the commercial property across Milburn Avenue in Milburn. So this is really kind of a transitional kind of location, and transitional uses and development schemes should be considered for the property. Access should be primarily to Milburn Avenue, especially for the commercial portion of it, and it shouldn't burden the quiet residential neighborhood, or neighboring properties on Baltusrol Avenue. All residential development would have to include a affordable set-aside, be it 15% if they're rental properties, 20% if they're sales properties. Also, a small passive open space park of type should be included in any development scenario. After looking at the property, it's my opinion, although this could be, obviously all of this is subject to the board's decision and further discussion, I think along Milburn Avenue, a little bit of that along Milburn Avenue probably would be advantageous because that provides most pedestrian access and visibility for pedestrians and for the neighborhood. And then what I did is I proposed two development scenarios. One would be a mixed commercial residential scenario where the property, approximately 2 acres of the property that abuts Milburn Avenue, would be devoted to commercial use. It looked to me that perhaps about 20,000 square feet of commercial use on a first floor could be possible there. I would envision that would also include 2- or 3-story building with residences above the commercial uses there. The rest of the property would be could be developed for residential, multifamily residential dwellings, and at a density of maybe up to about 14 units per acre, which would yield, with the 7 acres, about 100 units. With an additional residences that would be above the commercial, it would be a total yield of up to maybe 118, 120 units, depending. The development, again, respecting those residential uses next door, should have a generous buffer to the rear and to the S60 zone to the rear, and another means of access for the residential use should be explored. There was some discussion, perhaps additional property could be acquired by any future developer to Short Hills Avenue. It's more appropriate to connect to that road rather than Baltusrol Avenue because it's more of a connector through road. There are multifamily developments that already have access to Short Hills, where Baltusrol Avenue is just a stub residential street that also connects to Tower Avenue, but it's just a local street as opposed to some type of a collector street. There really shouldn't be any direct connection other than pedestrian connection between the commercial and the residential, so that people don't travel through the residential properties to get to the commercial properties. Another scenario which could be explored is having it 100% residential and without any commercial use. That could also include different types of residential where a more intense, perhaps apartment types be closer to Milburn Avenue and townhouses further to the east adjacent to the single-family residential. Again, that provides more of a transitional development between the single-family residential and the commercial that is across the street. I think you would get about the same yield of units, 110, 120 units, out of a development like that. There had been talk about, I know that we've had discussions about whether it be age restricted or non-age restricted. I have a problem with mixing age restricted and non-age restricted. I think that property could be developed as what's known as age targeted, where especially with the townhouse units where you have master suites and a full living accommodations on the first floor and second floor, would be additional bedrooms, but usually that devoted to grandchildren visiting or guests visiting, so that it's more desirable for active adults rather than having a full restriction on only age-restricted 55 and older residents. And then the other thing that I had is municipal actions. Is I think there's a couple of ways to pursue this type of development. One is through straight rezoning, in which we craft the development ordinance after we amend have a master plan amendment that would make this as a permitted use, a recommendation in the master plan that this be rezoned for permitted use in whatever scenario the town sees fit. And then follow that up with the development ordinance, which specifies all of the coverages, the densities, the heights, setbacks, et cetera. That's one way of doing it. Another way is to identify this as an area in need of redevelopment. I think you can make an argument that it is. The building is obsolete. It's been sitting vacant for over 20 years. And then a redevelopment plan could be adopted for the property. And you could be more specific, as the board may remember, the members of the board who are here may remember, for the redevelopment in the center of the town, where there was very specific design criteria that was identified in the redevelopment plan. And then you have a little bit more control. There may be revenue advantages to doing it that way, and you really get exactly what you want. If you just zone it, it may not. There may be a lot more give and take.
So basically, at a high level, cutting it down, there's two proposals. One would be light retail to match what Millburn currently has, the streetscape,
Right.
with some apartments on the top, plus or minus 2 acres, some sort of, I don't want to call it a barrier, but some sort of thing that separates the retail, so that way no cars can come from one site to another. And then the remaining 7 acres behind it would be some townhouse developments with like 14 per acre. Plus
I don't think it would be townhouse, because at 14 units per acre, you really can't get townhouses.
Density.
Townhouses,
Well,
I mean,
like what we did, like what was done on behind the Homewood Suites or Holiday Inn, what that was, that type of thing.
yeah, but that's a lesser, well, that's a combination of
Yeah.
units and overall site, but and townhouses, if you're just townhouses, you really can't get a density of much greater than 8 units per acre.
Okay.
Unless, it's difficult. You really need a different housing type to get up to 14 units.
So what would be the 14 per acre? Like,
Like apartment flats, stacked on top of each other, 2 or 3 stories, or more, 3 stories, wouldn't it be 2
yeah,
stories?
we'll have to kind of explore what the right, and that's why potentially there's pros and cons to each, but a
Right.
redevelopment allows us to do more, but, and so forth. Mr. Mardini, anything from you or Mr. Disco before, because I want Mr. Keynes to advise the board what our responsibilities are or not.
No, I mean, we have to make sure the first step would be to, if this goes forward, is to talk to the property owner and see what the property owner has in mind, what he would prefer, which option. I would think he would prefer the area in need option, just
We're not there,
because,
Jerry, just wait.
just because probably would be more advantageous to them and more profitable, and it would suit what the township would like to see. So I would think that's the first step, and then after that, if he is in agreement with one of these options, then we can go to Millburn and make sure Millburn have no problems with the choices we have.
Do we ask the governing body, and this may be more for him, to declare it an area redevelopment at the same time of going to the Millburn and property owner?
If that's what the board wants, I would, yes.
Yeah. So that recommendation. So, Mr. Keynes, if you could just give the board, the redevelopment aspect gives more room. That gives us simultaneously to be able to speak to the developer, to the owner of the property in Millburn. But what's the pros and cons between option 1 of just flat out rezoning it, and option, so the board gets the thing, or redevelopment, area redevelopment?
This is subject to Bob Michaels, I'm happy to answer that. It's subject to Bob Michaels maybe beating me up with Sammy a little bit. I don't see that a property of this size is really a great candidate for a rezoning. Because I think doing the creative things that Bob is suggesting, and there are a whole bunch of other creative things that can be done probably, it doesn't fit with traditional zoning, because traditional zoning, you have to have your setbacks, you have to have this inside, where if you do an area in need of redevelopment, you can get very, very creative, do wonderful things. You can get the landowner in, because we're not talking about condemnation or anything else, as far as I know you're not,
No,
and I don't
no.
think you are. I'm just putting it all out there so that everybody's really clear. So if we have people knocking down the doors, literally, of our office to get stuff classified as areas in need of redevelopment. You all did that downtown
Right.
on my first stint here, and it's coming along. The fact is, it gives you as a municipality, as Bob, I think correctly said, a lot of room to roam. And if I'm the landowner, I'm jumping for joy. We have done big projects like this on the Hudson waterfront. We've done big projects in Elizabeth. It just works. There are also financial incentives, and any reasonably sized developer or any creative person who has a piece of land in this location, I think you gotta be looking at the area in need of redevelopment, because then you can get creative and you can tweak it. I think you can certainly come up with standards, but you certainly should be having conversations with, I think as Sam, well, maybe all three of you guys suggested it. I think you should come up with some ideas, as Bob has thrown out, and I know as Sam has talked about, as to what might be done. And quite frankly, maybe Milburn will have some different ideas. I have no idea. I'm not gonna be presumptuous as to what our sister municipality does or doesn't want, but I think going and speaking with them, they could really get excited about this, because this could be an extension of everything that they're doing.
How much of the property is on our, in Springfield? compared to Mil-
99.
Most of the 9 acres are in Springfield, only the first 20 feet actually are in Milburn.
Okay,
Yeah,
so,
7 and 14.
I mean, I'm just a little, okay.
I just want to go, alternate sides, so. So, Sil, do you have any questions? to the board?
I was just talking about how many apartments could possibly be built there. I know. it
I'm
was
not
just-
there with apartments,
know.
but I think
was
the
just-
idea of doing just the redevelopment gives the governing body some discussion on what's right potentially for the site or not. We're just recommending. We don't make any decisions, the board. We just recommend.
Right.
So,
No question.
Mr. Barnett?
So a couple of questions. So for, actually, as a comment first, certainly, if there's any place left in Springfield that I think is worthy of redevelopment, certainly that property. And given the fact that we haven't updated our master plan since 2003, redevelopment at a minimum is just a much faster path, right, to anything else.
Well, we did do a reexamination report in 15.
Yeah, well, that was,
2015.
yeah. But that being said, if we go the route of establishing it to be a redevelopment zone, does Milburn also need to establish that their little strip, their few feet, is also a redevelopment zone? And I guess I'm also interested in sort of who is going to Milburn and to the owner and having these conversations. I know, you know, how does that, what are the mechanisms that, who does that? Are we appointing our attorney to speak with their attorneys? Is it-
I would think the township committee will make that decision. The township committee probably would have the mayor and myself and maybe the whoever, the township attorney or a redevelopment attorney go and speak with the property owner.
Exactly. That's the way.
So back to my first question, would they also have to designate that little strip of land to be redevelopment, which means a process that we have to deal with?
If I may, I think that
If we did three
they would have to get site plan approval from Milburn, because our access is gonna go through Milburn property in Milburn Township.
My
They
biggest
don't have to, I don't know if they have to do a redevelopment plan, but definitely Milburn would have some say, because they have the authority for granting site plan approval for that little strip.
So my biggest concern for all this, no matter which direction we choose, my biggest concern is that Milburn has been holding up any development on this property for years. Obviously, we took a long time, but we approved this when I first got on the planning board. I can't remember how long.
When you had hair.
When I had hair. And then Milburn has been holding it up the rest of the time. When I was mayor, I spoke with the mayor of Milburn, and they were very clear about what they wanted on that property back then. Now, it's new people there now, so maybe it's changed, but so I do have some insight as to what at least the past people in Milburn have wanted on that. I'd rather not say on record.
But I think what we're trying to propose.
But I want to make sure that we also have a plan here. That I love the idea of redevelopment. I love the mixed use option, the first one. But I don't want to see this going for another 15 years, you know, or 18 years like it has been. Yeah, I'm losing it fast. You know, because of that. So if we can get our ducks in order with the owner, with whatever we need to know about what they have to go through, And whoever the team is who is going to present this, you know, can be well organized and well prepped on our side with everything they need so we can get Milburn's handshake sooner than later. So we're not here, you know, in you know, another 10 years still having these conversations.
I'm with you. That's why we're trying to be a little swifter on our side. We'll reach out to the governing body and ask for direction on who, but I know that Sam will probably lead some of that charge.
David, if I could just, if it's all right, Jeff?
Absolutely.
We had a similar situation in Sussex County where one municipality that I didn't represent went ahead, did a whole plan to develop stuff, and they were gonna put, happened to be a ShopRite, I'm sorry. It happened to be a ShopRite in Sussex Borough. Warner's Township had property, and all they had zoned it for was a parking lot. Wantage that I represented said, we're not so sure that that's a good idea. We're not so sure that we like that so much. It shortened the process a lot because we wound up doing a redevelopment. We wound up doing a pilot program between the two municipalities. It shortened it up immensely because the township that I represented said, we're not so sure we're buying into just getting a parking lot. So I think the way that this has been outlined might be able to accomplish that. We literally just finished that up, and the site plan hearings are coming up right now, and it took a year and a half or 2 years because there was some punching stuff. You all have been through that, though, as you said, years ago, so this may be the right tool to get you where you're suggesting, buddy.
And I think with, so if you don't have anything,
No, I'm good,
I think with separating the two, I mean, my question was gonna be to Glenn and our professionals. If we're having the two uses, if Milburn didn't want what we're proposing or what we're thinking, could the property be subdivided in the, quote, 7 acres as Mr. Michaels did in the 2? And the 7 acres had access for Short Hills Road or Baltus Rollway, whatever it might be. Would Milburn have say on those 7 acres because the access point wouldn't touch anything?
The answer is no. If it was purely within this municipality and it was designed that way, but my thought, and that's why I gave you the example of what happened on this other situation, I think you can work something out.
Yeah, and that's what.
And I think that's where, I think that's where you're going, Dave.
I certainly want to. Yeah.
I think they probably will too.
Yeah.
Once they see that everybody's being sensible.
Yeah, and it may be something of a different use that they didn't want before, that's something
Well,
different.
and quite frankly, Mr. Chairman, they may have some slightly different vision, but guess what? If it works, I don't know that you really care as long as it's okay for this side of the boundary and it's okay for that side.
And I think that's where we're.
When are we getting on this side of the table?
Yeah, we're getting Sharon.
I mean, you guys are stuck there in the middle.
Okay.
Go ahead, because I want to talk.
Clowns to the left, jokers to the right.
Go ahead.
Sharon?
Nothing.
Okay, Jerry, now it's your turn.
You know, a couple things. One is, you know, the property owner can do whatever he wants as long as he's within the law. And I think the town where we're doing redevelopment was zoned as redevelopment in the late 80s, early 90s. Wasn't only the center of town, but other parts of town as well. Once, and it's in our best benefit, I believe, to put it into a redevelopment zone because, one, that gives the property owners, and if I'm not mistaken, more, they have access to do different things than they can right now. They could go higher, they can build different ways, and which would probably be more, give them the access to bring in more revenue on their own property there. The question, and the pilot program, which would benefit the town as well. But I think the big issue is with the redevelopment is what Milburn, you know, how do they come into that? We have to work together with them, but I think we really need to sit down with the property owner, and why not reach out to Jessup, who's been working with redevelopment and with the redevelopment in town, and the planner that they use. What was his name, Sam?
Was Phillips Price.
Yes.
They are the planners for Milburn.
Okay, so then
That's our next step, Jerry.
Well, I'm just saying, but Tiger, I think we're going a little bit, I mean, at the end of the day, the property owner can pretty much do whatever he like, as long as within the law. Am I correct in this?
Yeah, but if he submits what it's currently zoned for, he knows, or she knows, that Milburn doesn't want a box retail.
The litigation, and correct me again if I'm mistaken, but the litigation seemed to be with the county, right? Wasn't it in the county courts now?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I think it started with Milburn.
yeah, and then it wound up going to
Shop,
Essex County.
It
It
started
was-
with us.
Yeah, then, but
Then
then
it went up to
right
Judge
now, it was
Krasinski.
in the county, and the county was holding it up, and that's where some of
And
the issues.
ShopRite sued, was a party to it too, so it was very entangled. So
But, and the owners, right now, just pulled out of the litigation, and I think it's, their partnership was breaking up, and so we don't have a clue. And
That's-
I think when we talk about redevelopment, and you start talking, I mean, again, most people would love to be in the redevelopment zone. I have a business that we're in it now, and we love it. It gives us different options, better than what would, if we weren't in it. But I honestly think you should definitely reach out to the property owner now. We have to be doing that
There-
now. We're putting the cart in front of the horse.
the governing body just gave us approval at
We
the
don't,
last
but
meeting.
you don't need it. We don't have to do anything. The governing body
We just can't call people and say,
the governing body has reached out, as Mayor Barnett knows, to different property owners in town, just as I did when I was mayor. The governing body has the right and can
And we
reach out to property owners and say, look, let's sit down and start having some discussions. And I think that's what needs to be done before, because, you know, when you're a property owner and you're letting government decide what you're gonna do with your property, it's like if we told her right here with her property, look, who are we to do that to anyone without including them in the process?
You said that
I
at
don't
the
think-
last meeting, we were going to get in touch with them.
yeah, and we are, that's our.
That
Well, I
was
don't think
what meeting
we're,
was
I
in
don't
that?
think we're.
I think we have to do that
I don't think
first.
we're specifically excluding them, but and because I know as the chairman says, you know, that's what they're doing. I was under the impression that the, well, I guess a few things. The fact that we're actually taking the time here at this board to put together a plan, so there's more heads on this one particular topic. So this board and the township committee can actually work in concert, where, you know, we have an opportunity, but look, so essentially it is our responsibility here to decide what is in this town, what the zones are gonna be, what's in the zones.
But there are laws
what the
that
character
the property
of
owner
the
can
zones.
say, I don't wanna do any of that.
Right, but I would rather go to the property, and if I were the township committee, if I were the mayor, it was once, you know, I like going to them with some of these options. I love the fact that we've actually done the study here, so now this board can now inform whoever is going to meet with Milburn, to meet with the owner. You know, we've done our due diligence, and we can go to them knowing what our options are.
I
And this
agree
board and the
with you on
township
that.
committee can consider all that before we go forward.
I agree with you on that, but I think we have to do it like we did other properties, where you put them in a redevelopment zone, and then you have our redevelopment attorney and the
And then we all
planners
talk,
sit down with them.
yeah.
But so,
I
Can
think
I-
we're all in
I
agreement
think
that
we're all
that's
in
what we have to
agreement
do.
so then the discussion should be, the township committee should zone it, get it going where it's in a
What
redevelopment.
we would ask, and I want Mr.
we don't-
Rendell's comments, that we as a board are charged with,
We haven't done that with any other redevelopment.
because the governing body didn't act first, we're acting. As our job is, and Mr. Keynes could do, is sound planning, like how Mr. Burnett said, making sure zoning ordinances, master plans, and so forth. We can request that the governing body deem it an area of redevelopment, simultaneously reaching out to the property owners. I mean, Mr. Keynes, you've been representing boards, what's done?
I like that we're being proactive.
I'm
Yes.
seeing everybody saying the same thing.
Yeah, we are.
So, I'm not disagreeing with anything, I'll use your terminology, Jim. I'm not disagreeing with anything from that side of the table, I'm not disagreeing with anything on this side of the table. I think it's a step. All Bob did so far is complete a study that says this is in fact an area in need of redevelopment, which everybody's in agreement.
Along with saying
Can I-
units could be
No,
put there.
he
just-
That was a little ahead of the game.
Well, now we all know what tools we have. in
You
our
only did what was asked of you, I'm not, it's not.
I think all he
I'm
was
just saying
suggesting,
That's a little ahead of the game.
I think all he was
I don't see
suggesting,
how
let me finish, you asked me to help you.
Yes,
I'm
please.
helping you. All Bob was suggesting was that on a 9-acre piece, it could sustain about 20,000 square feet of commercial with one proposal, and about 120 residential units. He's not saying that that's the way to go.
No, I understand.
And I think all he was doing was throwing it out. And my suggestion, if I were on this team, if Jessup is doing it, he'll do the same thing. But if I were doing it, I'd be going now to the property owner and saying, look, we came up with some ideas. If you have a bevy of beauties sitting there that are talented at doing this
I would
stuff.
recommend Jessup reach out to them now,
So
just like he's done with other properties.
Can I jump in, please, for a second? I believe the township committee at the last meeting gave us the authority to reach out to the property owner and to Milburn, and we have decided to wait till we have this meeting
Exactly.
tonight to go over Bob's recommendation.
Exactly, thank you.
'Cause that's
Before
what
we,
Mr.
so
Chair asked
now
at the
that
last
we have
meeting.
discussed it, we will definitely reach out to the property owner probably tomorrow.
Who would reach out to?
It will be right now, it will be
We-
Sam.
I have to check with the mayor, and he,
Would you recommend that the redevelopment attorney, like he's done in the past, do it?
Absolutely,
Okay, that's all.
absolutely. In fact, I reached out to the redevelopment attorney and left him a message to call me because I wanted to do just that.
Okay, so you and I are on the same.
Yeah, I think we all are. And look, now
Okay.
we know what tools we have in our tool belt.
Exactly. Mr. Brendel, anything before?
Thank you.
Yes.
Sure.
Sitting at the end.
Yeah, it's not the best place.
On that side.
So,
You offered.
I think,
I did, you could have swapped.
I should have swapped, and it would have been 3-3. It would have been easier. I think, Mr. Keynes, I think you raise an important point, which is there's a difference in approach, I think, between maybe what we're thinking, you might be thinking is gonna happen and what might actually happen. I don't know what the plan is. I think there's a different, if you go to anyone, whether it's Milburn, the property owner, or anyone, and say, here's my paper, here's what I think we should do, what do you think? Yeah, I agree, there might be some backlash, right? I think it's a matter of approach. So I think if we commission the study to understand, what the possibilities are, but then, as you said, raise to the property owner, what are your ideas, right? I think it's a difference in approach, right? I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, the plan is to go in and say, here's our study, here's what we want to do, we're going to push it through, that's it. And I think I fully support going in with an approach of, hey, we had our side prepare ideas, why don't you have your side come prepare with ideas also? So I think it's a nuance and approach, maybe.
Well, I think one of the biggest part of this is that you mentioned the planner for Milburn happens to be the planner we've been working with on our redevelopment, is that
Right.
correct?
Yes.
So that's a no-brainer there. I
Yep.
mean, so I definitely have to go you'd have to go that way.
Unless he considers that a conflict. I mean, that's,
I don't think it is, I don't think it is. Matter of fact, in the example I gave you, we used the same planner
okay.
in both municipalities. And the fact is, you got a very good planner here.
No,
let me just finish. You got a very good planner here, but, that office, we do a load of work with them, and bringing Bob in and bringing that firm in, you can come up with something pretty terrific. But then we gotta see what the land is thinking.
100%.
Mr. Brendel,
And I had one
last-
more
last
question I
thing.
had. Forgetting the property owner for a second, and let's say they're amenable to whatever anyone comes up with. If Milburn says, I don't want to play, right, I'm keeping my 20 feet and we're going to do what we want with it. I think someone asked, I just didn't hear the answer. Is there anything to stop us, again, assuming the property owner is okay? Is there anything to stop us from saying, okay, well, we're going to take everything but the first 20 feet, we'll have no access through Milburn, it'll all be through, what's that?
I think you answered that.
I did, and we
I
said
just
that we
wanted-
can separate that, and Mr. Keane said that as long as it's not their traffic, that they.
Right, so as long as they have all the traffic would stay on the Springfield side and there's no way to cut in.
Yeah, that's like a
there's
last
nothing-
resort, because
No,
that's
no, I
antagonistic.
Understand that, I just want to understand the possibility. It is a possibility for us to play only in Springfield. Okay, no questions.
I think that'll be the list.
Last resort.
100% agree, 100%
Last
agree.
resort.
I just didn't hear the answer.
Okay, so I just want to summarize, and then I want to see some discussion from the board now. At the last meeting, the governing body, we asked them to be able to go to Milburn and to commission the study, and they approved all three. I think hearing from some members of the board, that we would like to reach out to the governing body to make sure who should be on point for a lot of this stuff, which Sam will take care of that with the mayor and Mr. Jessup and so forth. But the question is, we all agree that this is an area that needs to be redeveloped. I mean, that's 20 years, the building's been vacant. I mean, I went there with Mr. Mardini, you see the building literally falling apart.
I've been inside that building a year ago or so. It's
Halloween?
scary. It's really terrifying.
Yeah,
So
so-
that building needs to go.
So from that standpoint, what I'd like to do is ask the governing body, which they can do without us anyway, is say that we have reviewed some of the things and we think they should look into making an area of redevelopment. We don't have the final decision of it, it's just our recommendation based upon Mr. Michael's reports, all of our discussion, Mr. Disco, Mr. Mardini's, and say, look, governing body, this is something that you should be looking at, and then they can decide how they want it. Because at that point in time, it's within their ballgame. We've done our due diligence with sound planning, said this is what we think, this is what we looked at. They can review the plan that Mr. Michaels, you're also a township engineer, so you're at the meeting, you can have some discussions, and then let them run with it as they are. So what what I'd like to do is ask the board to entertain a motion to, number one, request that the governing body designate this an area of redevelopment. Simultaneously, we will, Mr. Mardini and Mr. Jessup and other members of the governing body, and whoever gets selected, will work with Milburn and the property owners to come up with what should be there, and then go from there. How does that, any?
Are you also gonna ask for the subcommittee? Remember you wanted somebody from our board to be also?
Oh, no, that's for our land use laws, but that's a separate thing.
I think, and maybe Glenn can correct me if I'm wrong here, is that in order to be designated an area in need of redevelopment, a study has to be done for that. The other alternative,
The governing body.
the governing body can identify it as an area in need of rehabilitation just by resolution without the study. And it still gives them the same, as long as you're not going to condemn property, it still gives you a lot of the same.
The problem is it takes pilots out of it.
Rehabilitation takes pilots out of it?
Yeah.
Okay, and then
But
I didn't.
if we have certain requirements that it would have to meet now in our ordinances for it to be designated into redevelopment. I'm not sure.
That would be the governing body.
Yeah,
It is, and
it's
again,
all,
I don't.
right, but
We're just saying,
yeah, right.
We're just telling the governing body, zone it for redevelopment.
well, we're just telling them to go look to determine if that's the right thing to do.
That's why the study is needed, to make sure you
I
comply
get it.
with the
I just-
requirement of the state.
I don't know why.
So-
It's why this part is necessary for that, but that's fine.
So
We're just trying to be proactive.
we're trying to be proactive to try to give the governing body, sometimes they're busy, they're looking at different things. We're looking at it to say, here, we've did some studies on it. We're giving them guidance, is a better way to say it. I mean, not everyone has to agree, but so with that, do I have a motion on the table?
Yes.
It's been moved.
It's been moved. Do we have a second it?
Sure.
Can I have a roll call?
Who's the second?
Brian.
Brian.
So what
Me and Brian
is
are
the
tag
motion?
team.
The motion is to let the governing body know that we've looked at this property. We feel it's an area that, and Mr. Keynes can correct me if I'm wrong, it's an area that needs redevelopment. We're not,
It's an area in need of redevelopment, and it appears
We
to
would
have
like it to be looked at to see if it meets
the criteria, because you
Criteria.
didn't do the criteria study yet?
No, I did not, no.
All right, so yeah, we want to get the study going. We want to have Bob authorized to do the study, or whoever, to do the study to determine whether or not this is in fact an area in need of redevelopment. We want
meeting
this-
all the conditions as outlined.
Well, no, there aren't conditions. They got to meet the standards of the
Of the statute.
And Bob's done them before.
Okay. Ms. Browski,
Yes.
Mr. Brindell,
Mr. Who?
You.
Yes.
That's you.
Mr. Barnett,
Yes.
There's other
Mr.
conversation.
Fernandez,
Yeah.
Vice Chair Kessel,
Yes.
and Chairman Tiger.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, so the last thing is just to remind the board that our next meeting, which will be noticed and Jen will send out, will be Monday, July 9th at 7:30.
Mr.
Last
Chairman,
thing is
I'd
I
like
have
to
to open
make
up to the public. I have to open up to the public. Any members of the public that wish to come forward and speak on any matters that have been before the board or any general stuff?
Anybody?
Sure, you've been waited.
Tell me
an
you're the
hour.
property owner.
Roger Buchineri, CEO of Incline Capital.
Yeah.
Looking at the SAC site, I met with Mr. Mardini. I live in Short Hills.
You're not the property owner, you're just a developer.
Not the property owner, or hope to be. So that's part of the conversation here. My personal opinion is an overlay is the correct way to go. I'm doing this in East Orange, in Yonkers, many different districts, where there was a very proactive board, whatever the governing body is, creating something that a developer can come in and say, great, here's existing zoning, whatever it is, you can do that all day long. However, this overlay comes in and gives you different things. So I think you can have kind of, what you're looking for all across the board. You can have contingencies on if access is not granted through Milburn, X, Y, and Z. If it's only residential, X, Y, and Z. You can have all that in one overlay district. So from my end, as I spoke with Ms. Mardini, I'd like to kind of be, kept afoot essentially of the development. I'm not so sure Arc Realty is looking to be the developer anymore on this property. They've been tainted for 18 years on it. So as I said, I live in Short Hills. I go to St. Rose. Pains me to go by this every day. It's
Whatever we do is
We
public.
have other properties, right?
yeah. So I'd love to talk about it. Yeah, exactly. I've lived
Everything
here
we
for
do is
5-6
public.
years.
You can keep in touch with
That's
Mr.
what I plan to do,
Mardini,
yeah.
and I'm sure he'll
Yeah.
tell you just like any other.
To just, on that, in your conversations with, Arc Realty, just see if they really want to be the developer. They might look to kind of string you guys along a bit of, sure, let's do that. They're just trying to increase the value.
Well, they could get it.
We'll find that out.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just putting it in your ear that,
They would, well, if not, they would want to be get it in the redevelopment, that way they can sell it to
Sell it
you. or
at a higher
sell it
value.
to
But what they might.
With all the
in-
approvals.
What they put it in there for might not be what somebody ultimately feasibly is able to do.
Yeah, and that's something that will.
Yeah, so I just want to put it out there. Sat here to listen for it, so.
Perfect.
But I'll keep in touch with Mr. Mardini and go from there.
And I'll
Thank-
tell you about the other properties that are in the redevelopment.
I live 5 minutes away.
Sam can give you a whole list.
Yeah.
Perfect, okay.
Nice building.
Thank you for coming. Any other members of the public that wish to come forward? Seeing none, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Who second, you did?
I don't know, make someone up. It doesn't matter. Thanks.
Okay, have a good evening.
Take care. Sharon, I did this, it's between 1 hour and 75 minutes, and it's 8:10, I was pretty good. Good night, I will talk to you.